There are two interesting points about the Easter story. One concerns the element that is absent, although you might expect it to be present. And the other concerns the element that is present, although you might not expect it to be present. In the resurrection story, as we have just read, there is the tomb, there are the wrappings, and then we're told about young men, angels, frightened soldiers, thunder and lightning. But the principle of the drama is missing. The Lord himself is not to be found. If the external signs of the Eucharist point to the real presence, the external signs of the resurrection point to the real absence. The precise moment when God took life, human life, at the Annunciation is unknown to us. The precise moment when that life was revealed to humanity in Bethlehem is unknown to us. And so is the precise moment when he rose to glorified life from the tomb. And so our first thought this Easter might be that the real God is likely to be absent when we think he's present, and present when we least expect him. And so our useful contacts with God are not going to be where we think he is, or where he should be, or where we think he should be, but somewhere else. Our true contact may be completely different. For example, suppose you are very proud, and who is not? It's the besetting sin of humanity. That's how it all began in the Garden of Eden. And you decide to become humble, so you pray for humility, and you read books about humility, and you think, how could you behave more in a more humble way? And nothing happens, so the Lord has not heard your prayer. And then suddenly you fail your exam, or you lose your job, or you make an absolute fool of yourself in public. Now you've found the Lord. That's the answer. When you least expect him. Now you're humble, because you have got into that situation. So he has answered your prayer, but not the way you wanted. In the 16th century, there was a famous soldier who had his leg broken in a battle by a cannonball. The leg was reset by the surgeons of the time, and when he got up, he walked with a limp. And he was a very proud man, and he said, "No soldier walks with a limp, and I'm not going to be one of them. Break that leg again." So they broke it. And he had a second period of convalescence, and he read every book in the house where he was, and eventually there were no more novels, stories of romance. So somebody gave him a life of Christ. And in that instant, reflecting on that life and thinking of what a life Christ led and the saints, and what a life he was leading, he lay down on that bed, a crippled man, and he rose, as we all undoubtedly know, the founder of the Jesuits, St. Ignatius of Loyola. So the Lord came to him in that suffering and in that book. Now a word about the element that is present in the resurrection story, even though we might think it mightn't be. And that element is women. When God took human life in Bethlehem, the news was brought to us by angels. But when he rose to glorified life in the resurrection, the news was brought to the world by women. And when these women went to tell the men what they had found, or not found rather, they were laughed at. Typical male pride. But this is not the mind of Christ. If he chose women to reveal him on this absolutely central element in our Christian religion, will he not choose women to represent him on all the other occasions? And will the attitude of men toward women and of women toward themselves not tell us very much about their attitude to Christ? If men respect women, and if women respect themselves, then each will find the risen Christ in each other, especially in marriage, but at all times. And if men and women fail on this account, then we have a failure of Christianity, which is pretty much how things are in the world of today. Many years ago, a magazine, in its Easter edition, he asked the readers to indicate who in the many distinguished people living today would you find Christ? And the readers gave various answers, but not one woman was chosen. So we have to redress this balance. All of us find God through a woman, our mothers. The good women of the past, and hopefully the good women of the present, brought our little toddlers to church, and they pointed out the statues and the stained glass windows, the altar, the tabernacle, and in those early years we learned about God. That was God speaking to us through our mothers. Who else? Christ came on earth through a woman. He lived and worked, as we know from the gospel, freely in the presence of women and in the company of women in his day, which was highly unusual. The relationships between men and women were quite strict, and it was almost equivalent to a proposition if a man spoke to a woman in public whom he didn't know. Some of Jesus' close friends were women. On Calvary there was just one young man. All the rest were women, including his blessed mother. Mary was with him at his birth, at the finding in the temple, at the presentation in the temple, at the wedding feast of Cana, and finally on Calvary. And so as we honor him today, so also we honor Mary and the other fine women who have been in the lives of all of us and made us what we are. And led by the Lord of life, we will go forward together with them to our own resurrection.